Hi everyone, Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here. Welcome to Author Journey Day, one of my favorite days of the month. We've had so much success with our author journey that we're even thinking about maybe doing it more often in the new year. But for now, today's author journey, we're going to be talking about book publishing. This light is fun. And part of the book publishing process is book design, which is a critical component. Without design, you don't have a book. And I'm very happy to have with me today a designer that I work with regularly named David Edelstein, and he's going to walk us through a process. And we're going to focus on a book that we worked on most recently together, one of the 2021 titles for OC Publishing, Rise, A Girl's Struggle for More, which is right behind me here. David took us from concept through to completion, so I'm going to let him talk a little bit about that. So for now, I'm going to bring David up to join me. Hey, David.
Hello.
Hey, so nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Excellent, and welcome to the author journey.
Thank you.
Coming to us also from Nova Scotia. OC Publishing is based in Nova Scotia, and David is as well. But you haven't always lived here, have you?
No, I've been lived in a few different places. Yeah,
all over the world. I was going to say in my introduction that you're kind of a triple threat. You're not just a designer, but you're also an editor and a meticulous proofreader, and also a translator. So that's
I do some translation as well. Yeah. It has been more, I guess, a little more on the design front these days, but definitely still editing as well, and sometimes translation from Japanese to English. So yeah, I like to mix it up.
Excellent. Well, I feel very fortunate to have found you. Oh gosh, a few years ago now, from an ad that you placed. I think it was in Atlantic Books Today. So thank you so much for being part of our team. And one of the things that everybody asks me is, how do you find a designer? What's the process? It sounds pretty simple, but I would like to share with everybody that the process is not simple by any stretch of the imagination. And it really takes a skill and lots of time and study. How did you become a designer? What led you into this realm of design?
So I started out just as an editor, and then I was working for a small, I would say, publishing company, but the publishing wing of an organization. And because it was a relatively small organization, I was able to take on different tasks, as needed. So I went from editing, and I hadn't at that point worked with any layout or design software, but I started to learn it, and I just really liked the process of putting together, whether it was a book or we had a small magazine that we were working on, flyers. I've always liked doing those things, even when I was a kid, like, doing them on computer. I can't draw myself in my life, but computers are very helpful in that way. So yeah, so I started to take that on and learn the software, and gradually get better and more experienced. And I really enjoy the process. Yeah.
And you say that you don't draw, so we have illustrators for that, right? Talk a little bit about the difference between illustration and art for a book and the actual design part of the book.
Right, and yeah, there are definitely people who do both. Mostly, in my case, I would use illustrations that other people have worked on. So an illustrator might do, it could be a very small illustration, or it can be something that's going to go in the book, but it's sort of a single unit. It's going to go on within the flow of the text. It's going to be the background of the cover. It's going to be an illustration for a poster, something like that, but it's a single unit. Whereas the design, we take that illustration and then we're going to add various elements to it, the most prominent being text, but sometimes other design elements as well, in order to create the finished product using the artwork. Yeah.
I wanted to say, if there's anybody watching us live and you have questions for David as he walks us through this process, please feel free to pop them in the comments, and I'll watch for them and I'll ask David as we go. The reason that I wanted David to talk about the book that we just recently worked on together, Rise, is because it took on all of the elements of the process. And hi, Jane. Jane Doucette is watching us live, one of our local author here. Love Jane's new book. Yay. Anyway, so this particular book encompasses a lot of the elements. So you talked a little bit about the text on the inside. So why don't we just take us through the process and from the concept through completion, and we'll jump in with any questions as you're sharing this particular project.
Sure. For this book, for Rise?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got some slides here to share that I will, oh, you already put them up. Thank you.
There we go.
So these are the two raw materials, I guess you'd say, that we started with from the author. There was a photograph. The book is a sort of a story of her grandmother's early life, and but it's presented as fiction, sort of historical fiction. But she did want a picture of her grandmother on the cover, and she had this picture on the left that obviously the picture was taken a long time ago, 1910s, 1920s. So it was a black and white photograph, but it had been colorized at some point. This one on the left was this colorized version, and that was the first one I received. And then the other component, although this came a little bit later, it was on the photo on the right, was a photo from the Historical Society in the town in Oklahoma where her grandmother was from. Mm-hmm. So that's a photo of Oilton. And the initial concept for the cover, we do like to, I was going to say that we often start with the cover because it sort of sets a tone for the whole book. And once we have the cover, it helps in informing how we design the inside of the book. So we starting with the cover here.
I just want to jump in and give a shout out to the Drumright Historical Society Museum, who actually supplied that picture of Oilton. That's one of my favorite photos. If you can see it, you look closely, you can see horses and cars. So this was the time that the author was writing about in her grandmother's life when those transitions were happening. So really cool stuff. It can be difficult to work from an old photograph, though, can't it?
Definitely. I think nowadays you can scan photos and you can scan them at a fairly high resolution, but there's still a lot of cleanup to do because old photographs have, they might have some scratches or creases or things like that, and so we have to clean that up a little bit in software using Photoshop or something similar. Or sometimes you may want to leave a bit of that too, to give it that, keep it looking like an old photograph.
Mm-hmm. And just FYI, I just had a little note. Diane has joined us, so the author is watching as we go through this. So Diane, if there's any other details you want us to add, just pop it into the comment.
Yeah. Yes. I think I love that photo of Oilton because it really captures the feeling of the. It's not the Old West exactly, but it has that feeling, just a main street, a big wide street. Mm-hmm. Fairly empty dirt road, and like you said, horses and cars mixed together. Mm-hmm. So it was a great photo to use on the cover.
And the other beauty of these photos is that they're royalty free.
In the public domain, yeah.
Of course, the picture of Ruby Pearl, who is the main character of the book, was provided by the author, and of course, Drumright Historical Society let us use this photo that was out of copyright. So we were very lucky on the fact that you are so skilled in making it all come together. So everyone's going to see how that came to be. So continue.
I was just going to say that the middle photo was a scan of the original photo that we got later on in order to get a higher resolution, a better quality. Mm-hmm. But as you'll see, we sort of we colored it as well. So go to the next slide. These are, so at the same time, we're thinking about how the cover is going to look. And initially, because it's historical fiction and it takes place in the Midwest, and during the 1920s, we thought about sort of themes at that time. We thought about the Art Deco theme, which was popular aesthetic of the time. And we also thought about kind of the Western aesthetic. And so we played around with some ideas for the, for the cover font. These were some samples. They're not necessarily what we settled on, but just to show you how the process goes, that we try a lot of different ideas and see what might work best. And these are two variations of the first cover concept, where we used the photo of Ruby Pearl. On the left, you see we're using the original photo that was that had been colorized. This was a little less polished, the one on the left there, but the concept is the same. And so on the left one, you have a sort of an Art Deco style font. On the right, you have more of a Western style font. And at the bottom, on the left there, this was before I had the photo of Oilton, so I had used another photo just as a placeholder, something a little bit similar. And on the right, we have the actual photo put in place there.
I also wanted to point out that in the original photo, the res wasn't high enough, so we had to kind of play around with that. You'll notice that there's something sort of at the back of her head that is it's talked about in the book, was a beautiful hair comb that was a gift to Ruby Pearl, I believe, from her mother or her grandmother. But it wasn't clear enough what it was. So I think that as we went through the design, the decision was made to sort of remove that. So it was a little less distracting.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what it is from that photo. So that was the first cover concept, and worked on that for a little bit. And then, as usual, the way that we usually work is we'll do at least two different concepts, which is pretty common. And sometimes an author knows, pretty much exactly what they want, and we'll just stick with that one. But sometimes they don't know, or they have a couple of different ideas, so we'll do two or sometimes even three different concepts, and then pick one and refine it. So this first concept was the more historical focused concept, and then the second one, which is what we landed on,
drum roll.
Probably seen it by now, but it's so this was a little bit different. We still have the photo of Oilton in there, but it's in the middle, and we have Ruby's photo also in the middle. The background, instead of being the sort of dusty pale brown or orange, is pink and purple. The font is very different. Have a nice cursive font, so it's just a different look altogether. And we showed them to Diane, and we all looked at them, and this is the one that she really liked, and this is what we went for.
And I think it's interesting when you talk about the font, because that becomes such a focal point of a cover and then carries through. So some of the fonts that you shared, that had this sort of Western or Art Deco look, we talked about a lot back and forth. And with the Art Deco font, even though that was a prominent style in that era, it was more on the city side. So it was very popular sort of in Chicago, but we were in Oilton and Drumright, Oklahoma, which was like in a town that was very progressive, but not, as citified, if I can use that word. So this font became a much more welcoming, it still has a historical flair to it, and is kind of a nice balance between girly and powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Art Deco, the story wasn't really about flappers or people in the big city or that kind of thing. It's about a young girl growing up and coming of age and that sort of thing. So it didn't necessarily apply. So we ended up with this, and I don't know, do you want to say any more about the front cover?
No, I continue. Okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. And the framing is quite elegant as well.
Yeah, the whole thing kind of goes together.
Yeah. Jane has a question for us. How did we choose you? How did we choose to work together? And we did talk a little bit about it into the introduction. And I found David through an advertisement in Atlantic Books Today. So, and liked his work. And so that was 3 or 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
David's worked on several projects for us, including, and when I said he was a triple threat earlier, it's kind of a quadruple threat because David often does our ebook conversions as well. So,
Right. Right. Which is the last stage in the process, I guess, once
right.
everything else is done. But
Yeah.
for important too.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing with this one, now that once we have the front cover, then we'll add the rest of the cover, which is the spine and the back cover.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know yet exactly how thick the spine is going to be because we don't have the page count of the book yet, but we can get a
At
rough
this
idea.
phase in the process.
What's that?
When you come to this phase of the process.
Right. At this point, we don't know exactly, but we can, say, okay, we can look at the word count of the manuscript and have a rough idea, and we can adjust it later.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I filled in the rest of it. I did a back cover background that was similar, but didn't have the photo of Oilton in it. And then we had a book description to add and a series of quotes from advanced readers of the book. And we put all that together on the back with, at the bottom, we have the OC Publishing logo, the barcode, the book prices. So those are common things that you find on most books. And the spine also usually has a publisher's logo of some sort. So that's how it all goes together. And then once the cover is done, or the cover doesn't have to be totally done. It's mainly to have the front cover done. Then we can start working on the inside of the book. And as I was saying, Anne and I have been talking about the designing the inside of the book is, people, I guess I was going to say most authors think of the cover as being very important, which definitely is. Everyone knows they need a cover designed. People sometimes don't realize that they also need the inside to be designed. It's not as design heavy as the cover, but it does have some design elements to it. So this is a sample sample spread from the inside of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And we took the font, the font where the word rise was in, and we used that for the chapter numbers up at the top, chapter 3. The chapter titles themselves have a different font, and then they add a little design element down under it. And so when we work on the book design, I guess one of the things that we do, or a big part of it, is called what we call typesetting. The name goes back to when they actually had to set metal pieces of type, right, to print a book. And typesetting is just formatting the manuscript into the way it's going to look in the book. And the way I like to think of it is that the goal of typesetting is to not be noticed, is to not, for the reader to not pick up on anything unusual or strange, because if they do, that's a sign that it wasn't done very well. Mm-hmm. So if the line spacing looks weird, if the lines are too close together, too far apart, if the font is too big, if the margins are too big or too small, things like that catch your attention because they're not done well. So ultimately, if you open a book and you're not noticing, you just think, oh yeah, this looks like a book, mm-hmm. and we've done our job.
So Jane has a good question. I love this question. I was going to ask you this myself. Do you read the whole book before you start working on it, or do you just skim it?
I don't always read the whole book. I did in this case because it was a really good story. I enjoyed reading it. But I can't necessarily read every book that I work on. No, you definitely have to skim it just to see what's in it, because you need to get a sense of what's going to be, what kind of different components are going to be in the book. This is a novel, so we basically just have chapters, and we have text. There's some breaks within the text where we added a design element there, but there's not too much else to worry about. So whether I had read the whole thing or not, I don't know if it would have made a big difference, but like I said, I enjoyed reading it.
You liked it. And draw the attention down to the little design on either side of the page numbers, like something just as finite as that can really spruce up a page.
Sure, yeah, and it's a choice whether to put something like that in or not. It's not like you don't want to get in the habit of doing something like that on every book because some books don't require it or are better without it. I've seen books we have up. You can see up at the top. There's a page header, which on the left would have the author's name, on the right would have the book title. I've read books that don't have any page headers, and some authors prefer it that way. So there's just different choices that you make depending on what the book is going to be like. There's sometimes, probably your biggest design in a book like this, your biggest design choice would be the chapter headers themselves, what you want to do with them, and the spacing and so forth. And you can definitely have fun with those depending on the book you're working on. You can do a lot of different things.
Talk a little bit about, some people prefer justified text. Some people preferred like the ragged right. So, and that's, industry jargon. So talk a little bit about what that is and how you make your decisions.
Yeah, by justified text, you're talking about having it aligned both on the left and the right side. And I would say that most books you pick up are going to look like that. That would be more common. But we do see some books where it's only aligned on the left and then the right is, like you said, jagged. It's the way that when you justify text on the left and right, the way it's done is by adjusting the spacing between the words just a little bit. And again, the goal is to not be noticed too much. Sometimes you'll see in books a paragraph where there's a lot of space just because in order to justify it, there wasn't really any other way. You had to have a lot of space between the words, and it might stand out. But overall, it's a nice effect because it's very clean and tidy. But for some books, it works really well to have just only a line on the left, and I think it has a bit of a less formal feel to it. So for some books that works well.
And for this book, you actually did two different interior layouts for us.
Right.
Diane was very eager to make sure that the book was accessible to readers with dyslexia, which is an admirable goal to have. And with a dyslexia-friendly layout, you don't justify because there's issues with the spacing, and so there's a lot of different elements that go into it that make it more readable in a dyslexia-friendly font. Correct?
Definitely, and this was an interesting project in that way because when we do generally when we do a book design, you want to bring the reader into the world of the book a little bit with the design, right? So your choice of font, again with the chapter headers and other design elements, they're subtle things, but they're creating the world of the book just a little bit, right? How you feel gives you a little bit of a feeling when you read it. Whereas when we went to the dyslexia edition, we wanted to use that font and only that font so that it was easier for people with dyslexia to read. And this is how it looks. So I kept a couple of the same design elements, but a lot of it is gone. We removed the page headers, the chapter numbers and the chapter titles, and the main text are all in the same font. So it doesn't have as much design, but hopefully it does its job in being easier to read for people who need it. Yeah.
That was a great project.
Yeah. It was.
Excellent.
It really was. So from there we were going to show, this was a promotional advertisement that we made for the book at the time of launch, maybe, or just a little bit before,
yes, it was just a little bit before launch, or maybe just around the same time, in Publishers Weekly, So this is a great example of tying all of the design elements together, not only from the book design, but also on the promotion side of things, whether it's a display ad or social media and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we made a 3D image of the book and used some elements from the cover, changing the colors a bit, and putting everything together for to help promote it. And I like the way that came out as well.
Yeah, it looks great. So what would you say? Thank you very much for that very comprehensive overview. It
Oh,
was
of course,
quick,
yeah.
but as people are watching again, whether you're watching live or at a later date, if you have questions about the book design process, feel free to add the comments. But what would you say is the biggest challenge when you approach a new book project?
Biggest challenge, it varies with each book, but I think the if you're starting from scratch, I think the cover is probably the most challenging because you know you really want to make an impact with the cover, and you want it to be, and you're sort of dealing with a blank canvas. With in the inside, at least you have the manuscript. You know basically what's going to go where.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's certain choices to make, but they're sort of defined choices, and you can work on them. The cover is a blank slate, and you're starting from from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do always find that challenging, unless sometimes, like I said, if the author, I do appreciate it when the author has something in mind that they want to use. It gives you a starting point.
Yeah.
That is definitely.
You know what? I want to bring up your slides again because Jane has a question about what your favorite genres are for us. So, of course, Rise is a young adult historical biographical fiction. It's kind of it's a big melting pot, but it works on so many levels because it's pretty high up on the rankings of all of those areas. But let's share you have, I think, one more slide and a few others. So your timing with that question, Jane, is perfect because, David can share with you some of the other projects he's worked on.
Yeah, sure. In terms of genres, I mean, I'm open to any genre, and I really like to have variety. This was a book that Anne and I worked on in a previous year.
The first project, wasn't it? So you may notice that the author name is very similar to the author of Rise, a very family affair. So
right.
Rachel Bain, the author of this book that David designed for us, is Diane's daughter. So very talented family.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about this design.
But a very different kind of book because this is a memoir.
Yes.
And I guess this was a good example of where the author pretty much knew what she wanted for the book. She didn't have, not exactly, but she had the concept. So we didn't do like two, very different concepts. We stuck with one and, did some variations. She had photographs taken professionally of herself in different poses. And the idea was to show a sort of sad or depressed looking version of herself in the background and a stronger version in the foreground. And then with the title of the book is her thought, right? It's coming out of her thoughts. So that's what we did, and then we added a little bit of a design element near the bottom to highlight the quote and the author's name, and that was it. Pretty simple there. So that's an example. Do you want me to show some more? Do you want to say anything more about this book?
I think one of the challenges for this particular project is that some of the chapters were pretty short. So, the design around that, and you did a brilliant job. But stay tuned. Okay. Rachel's working on the next one. So.
Oh, okay. That's neat. Yeah, I remember that now. And I was going to point out that that's why you can see where under chapter 1 we didn't do anything fancy with the start of the chapter. Like sometimes we'll have what's called a drop cap where the first letter is very large, or you do something with the first line of the chapter. We didn't do that here because the chapters were so short. Some of them were only 1 page or less than a page. And if you started doing that, it would just get too busy. Too many of those just takes over. It doesn't work well. So again, that's an example of where you make that kind of decision based on the nature of the book.
Please share.
Yeah. These are just an example of a few other covers that I've worked on recently. The first one on the left there, Essentials of Divine Breathing. That's a book of a spiritual philosophy and breathing exercises. The book has a combination of sort of essays and actual exercises. So we wanted a cover that was very spiritual looking and we used two different photos for that, and I like the way that one came out.
These are not OC Publishing titles, just so
no, these are not. These are
yeah.
just my own
David
project.
has, yes, David
If I
has.
had more covers, they had to show it.
David
But,
has other clients, so if anybody's listening and likes what they see and wants to work with David directly, they're more than welcome to contact him. And I'll just bring up there we go. So continue. These are beautiful. I love the novel Anon.
Oh yeah, so that one is a novel. It's also, I guess you call it historical fiction. It's based on the life of one of Buddha's disciples, one of his 10 great disciples, known as Ananda, in the West. And so it's a story about that. So for that one, we used like a lotus flower combined with an image of Buddha, kind of overlaid a bunch of things on top. And originally I had a different kind of cover in mind for that, where you can see the purple color in the text. I wanted the whole thing to be that kind of purple and reddish color, but we ended up with something a little more lighter and I guess spiritual feeling. But I did, maybe I can show you quickly. So I don't have a photo of it, but I did put the purple on the spine and the back. So sometimes you can do something like that if you want to feature a different color. You can, put it on the spine. Nice. Yeah, that worked well. And the one in the middle is a book I did recently for somebody in the United States, Bonnie Tomlinson, and she wrote a book about organizing your home. And she had a great concept for the cover. It's
that's cool, Dan.
Buying bins.
Yeah, love the bin cover. So simple yet arresting, James.
So simple, yeah. It's very clear what it is, right? You see the bins, you're like, oh yeah, I know those bins.
Oh my God, I love bins. I'm sorry, I can't stop buying them.
Yeah. So you can definitely send a message to the cover, and it's fun to work on. What else was I going to show? This is an example of a book that I did recently, again for another client. It's a nonfiction book called The Thriving Doctor, and the book is I wanted to show this an example because it's a nonfiction book as opposed to a novel that basically has a chapter start and then text to the end of the chapter and then next chapter. This has a more complicated layout. We have the chapter headings. We had we see it says Naomi's story. So a lot of the chapters, either at the start or within the chapter, there would be like a story about a particular case. On the left, you can see we had numbered lists. I think we had bulleted lists as well, and then we have a lot of these block quotes that we did them in bold with a little border around them. Here's another list with arrows. Just an idea of like that the book design can become a lot more complicated depending on what's in it, and you want to keep my goal is always to sort of keep it looking clean, keep it looking attractive, but you want to also highlight all those different elements, right? Make them stand out in the way they're supposed to without it getting too busy and overwhelming.
Right.
It can be a challenge, but it's a fun challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you never shy away from a challenge. That's what I love about working with you. Every time I come to David with an idea for a project, he's, absolutely, let's go, rock and roll.
Well, I love the opportunity to learn something new. If it's something I haven't done before, like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to do that for this project, and then you've done it, right? And then you know something you didn't know before, which is always nice.
That's awesome. So David, if anybody wants to reach you, is the best way to go through your website? Yeah,
there's a contact page on my website, texanddesign.com. I think my email address is on the website as well.
Okay.
Phone number.
All right.
I'm always happy to chat. If anybody's working on a book and just want to chat about it a little bit or share some ideas, I'm always happy to do that and see if we're a good fit.
Excellent. When you've given us a lot of food for thought, I can't believe that we're already over our general half-hour slot, but I could keep asking questions. Sometimes it feels like for people who are new to the industry, a little bit of a fire hose of information. But we're always here and willing to answer questions and welcome questions. And David, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on the author journey. And it's always such a pleasure to work with you. And I had so much fun today. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for having me. And it's always great working with you too, Anne.
Excellent. Well, we'll see you very, very soon. So that's what we have today for the author journey. A lot of great information on book design and great examples shared by David Edelstein, who is a regular OC Publishing design team member. We're very lucky to have him as part of the OC Publishing team, but he also does work outside of OC Publishing as well. So I hope you enjoyed today's author journey, and I hope you're having a wonderful holiday. Happy belated Thanksgiving for our friends in the States. And as we all get going for the rest of the holiday season, I hope you'll stay safe and healthy and happy. And we'll see you next year. We're going to take a little break in December from Author Journey, but we'll be back. And as the month progresses, we will still have lots of updates. We have Timothy, Titus, Terrence, O'Toole, and the Dragon coming out. Launch day is tomorrow. So stay tuned to OC Publishing. Subscribe to our newsletter, visit us on Facebook, on our YouTube channel, and stay in touch. So we'll see you soon and hope you have a great day. Bye for now.